Welcome to Rounding Third, brought to you by Batter Sports. What is Rounding Third? Come on, wake up. You're on this, you know it. Dad, story time. Let's go, let's kick it off. Joined by my favorite Todd. Todd, how you doing?
Hey, I love being a fan even when it hurts, but not today because today's opening day for the Penguins, watching a little Bedard and Crosby. So if you hear some shouting in the background, it's because me and the boy are watching a little Penguins.
That is not a bad evening. Hockey is back. However, we're back with Rounding Third, and we're stoked to hear what Dad has to offer. And I give you the host, the legend, the man, the myth, the man who does it all, creates it all, stops waves from hurting your family. This is my father, Peter. Welcome to the show. What do you have for us tonight?
Well, surprise, surprise, we have a baseball story. I'm going to be talking tonight about Dave Winfield, but Dave Winfield, Hall of Fame baseball player, incredible athlete. I'm going to focus on, shockingly, 10 years of his baseball career where he was absolutely miserable when he was playing in the Bronx for the New York Yankees, and explain what was going on. So let's talk a little bit about Dave Winfield first. Dave Winfield grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota. He was an exceptional athlete, okay? He was on the high school baseball team primarily as a pitcher, and he was on the basketball team, baseball team, and then he went to the University of Minnesota, where he played on both teams. He excelled at pitching, but he also batted .385. So there was a lot going on. When he joined the basketball team, they put him in, and Bill Musselman, who later went on to coach in both the NBA and the ABA, said Dave Winfield was the best rebounder he ever saw. He just knew how to go and get the ball. So University of Minnesota won the Big Ten in basketball, something they hadn't done in forever when he was there. They went to the College World Series in baseball, where he was given the award for the best player in the College World Series, even though his team finished in third place. So he's just exceptional. Came time for the draft. Dave Winfield was drafted by 4 teams. He was drafted by San Diego in baseball, the Atlanta Hawks in basketball, NBA, the Utah Stars in the ABA, and the Minnesota Vikings drafted him for football, even though he never played the sport.
No hockey?
No hockey. He's just an incredible athlete, had a Hall of Fame career, got drafted by San Diego, played with San Diego, and he played with them for quite a while. In fact, he's in the San Diego Baseball Hall of Fame. But it came to a point, as often happens, after 8 successful years in San Diego, where he was on the All-Star teams, where he became a free agent. And nobody could compete with George Steinbrenner of the Yankees when he wanted a player. So it was an inevitability that Dave Winfield was going to become a Yankee. The Yankees had great success in the 70s with Reggie Jackson, and they just expected they were going to keep on winning, and so they added Dave Winfield. And then the evil started. Steinbrenner found out that the agent for Dave Winfield put a cost of living escalator in the contract that the boss, Steinbrenner, hadn't noticed. So he was ticked off from the beginning because he was going to have to pay extra money. Now, Dave Winfield's numbers with the Yankees were exceptional, but Steinbrenner never liked him. Maybe because of the money or whatever, but the other thing was the Yankees stopped winning. He expected World Series every year, and that wasn't happening. They did make the World Series early on Dave's career with the Yankees. Dave Winfield was tremendous in the American League Championship Series, but when he got to the World Series, I think he got like 1 hit, and they lost the World Series. For that, Steinbrenner never forgave him. His famous quote, and you got to know, a quote in New York City hits the papers, and that sticks with you forever. Steinbrenner said Reggie Jackson was Mr. October, Dave Winfield is Mr. May. And that stayed with him, and Dave was a sensitive guy, and he was very, very unhappy with that, but there was nothing he could ever do to please Steinbrenner. In one season, he batted .340, was going into the final game of the year, and Don Mattingly and he were tied for the batting title. Mattingly got 4 hits in that game and won the batting title with a .343 average. What bothered Winfield so much, he and Mattingly got along fine. They walked off the field together. He congratulated Mattingly. But what bothered him is that most of the fans were cheering for Mattingly, and Steinbrenner was cheering for Mattingly. And he couldn't help but conclude that it was racism. The reason Mattingly was more popular was he happened to be white. He couldn't get that out of his mind. And so he spent really personally miserable years with the Yankees. He missed one whole season because of injuries. He didn't get hurt himself. But I looked at the 8 seasons that he actually played, and I found out he averaged 25 home runs a year and averaged 101 RBIs a year. And he batted in the high 270s, 280s, 290. He had the .340 year. His play was excellent. Okay, he also stole bases. But Steinbrenner had him locked in as Mr. May, and he kept putting these ridiculous... He would tell the managers to bench him. He would tell the managers to make him bat 6th or 7th in the lineup. He did all this stuff to make Winfield look as bad as possible. Winfield continued to play excellently. He has had great years in New York, but people in New York didn't really notice it. Dave Winfield was the first athlete to start a charitable foundation, the Dave Winfield Foundation, where he helped educate underprivileged children. In the middle of his stay in New York, Steinbrenner sued the Dave Winfield Foundation and said it was a fraud, that they weren't paying out any money to the kids. It ended up not being true. And so Winfield had to fight for the money for his charity. Now, here's the really weird thing. Steinbrenner, the boss, became friends with a known gambling criminal, the last name of Spira. And he got Spira to claim Winfield was betting on baseball games.
Come on.
And this was after they had gotten Rose for doing this. I mean, he was trying to literally ruin his career and get him out of baseball. The commissioner of baseball investigated it, and his conclusion was Steinbrenner had to resign from the team for what he did. And he was told he was out of baseball for 30 years. They later got that shifted back to 2.5 years, and he was sentenced to 30 months in prison. Steinbrenner was. In the meantime, the Yankees decided this was too much. They traded Dave Winfield to the Angels, where he did well for a couple of years, and then he went to the Blue Jays. Now, freed from that burden of New York, Dave Winfield's famous thing when he's playing as Toronto is during warm-ups, he threw the ball in and killed a seagull by hitting it with a ball. After the game, Canada being Canada, they arrested him for cruelty to animals.
Shut
and
up.
he had to pay a $500 fine for killing a seagull. Crazy. But Dave Winfield did, I think at the age of 40 or 41, make the World Series with Toronto. And they won the World Series. Dave Winfield got the game-winning hit in Game 6. And he finally won a World Series, performed well in the World Series, getting rid of that moniker that Steinbrenner had given him. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame, inducted at the same time as Kirby Puckett. Kirby Puckett said that he was one of the greatest people and athletes he ever made. At the Hall of Fame induction, here came a statement from Steinbrenner where he says, Dave Winfield is probably one of the greatest athletes I have ever known. And there is an attempt, and there was a public reconciliation between the two. Dave Winfield had his number retired in San Diego. The Yankees had a Dave Winfield Day where they recognized number 31, but they didn't retire it. The Yankees have 23 retired numbers. Winfield's is not one of them. So if you just read the facts, and I've left a lot out, if you read the facts of what an amazing athlete and human being Dave Winfield was, it's an awesome story. Today even, he's renowned for going around giving talks and helping people and things like that. He's in the Hall of Fame, went in with Kirby Puckett. But why, for that block of years, 8 years that he actually played the season out, he did really well, and he was just miserable because Steinbrenner was trying so hard to just undermine him. That's the part of the story a lot of people don't realize, but that's what we do on Rounding Third. We dig in and get the details.
Well, this is the second one in a row that's involved Steinbrenner basically being a psychotic jerk.
Well, I'll try to find one where he's a good guy, but that's going to take some time.
Make sure it's not one of the Seinfeld episodes where it's not actually him. I met Dave Winfield once. I had just graduated.
I thought you were going to say you met Steinbrenner. Okay, you met the right one.
Yeah, I met Dave Winfield. I had just graduated from college out in California, and being a recent college graduate, I got a job as a waiter at a restaurant called Gladstone's in Santa Monica, which was on the beach. And being on the beach, and it's still there. It's a great restaurant, and being it was my first week on the job, the way that you learned the table numbers while you were studying the menu was that you would host. You'd be one of the hosts, so people come in and you'd show them to their table. Sure enough, in walks this lovely family and the most massive human being I've ever seen in my life. And he had just retired the year before, and it was blatantly obvious to me this was Dave Winfield. So sure enough, we have a table by the window. It overlooks the beach and everything. And I walk him to the table. I give him the menus and I show him to the seats. And I just turn around and I was like, hey, it's a real honor to meet you. And I went to shake his hand, shook my hand, and his fingers went all the way up my forearm and scratched my elbow while he was shaking it. And just massive human being. And it was crazy. It was like one of my first days there. And Dave Winfield comes in with his family to eat. And that was really cool. Listen, for walking the guy to the table and showing him to a seat, there was no reason for him to do anything but be a nice guy, but he was a really nice guy, and he shook a kid's hand. So I was, 22 or something? I don't know.
I'd like to go into Mr. George, the Yankees owner mentality, if you will. So he feels slighted when he signs him because he finds these clauses on his contracts that he has to pay. So I feel like Steinbrenner has this kind of hatred for things, and he latches on to certain items of people. And we've all worked with people who give you kind of a nickname or kind of a status, and you can't ever shake that. So you have to leave your job, or you have to leave your career and go to another company or something. The thing that's interesting is he worked so hard to sign him, and he wanted him so bad that he proceeded to feel like he got slighted in his want or taken advantage of in some way, shape, or form. Two things that I would have done, but I'm sure Dave Winfield's a better man than I. Having been sued for his nonprofit by the owner of the Yankees, which is an unbelievable story. One would have hoped
crazy
that Dave would have gone to the judge and said, I don't want anything to happen to him other than for him to donate, pay off the legal fees, and then donate to my nonprofit, which of course probably didn't happen. But to have your owner sue you, your nonprofit, to say you're not doing goodwill, and then furthermore to put the topper on it is to say you were gambling with a buddy.
The gambling thing is nuts. Do you remember the Pete Rose thing?
Pete Rose it's still wild. He's not in the hall, but we won't even need to get into that. But let's go back to the owner of the Yankees is friends with this gambler, this degenerate, some would say, who then testifies and lies about Dave Winfield's gambling habits. So, George, what were you gambling on? What were you doing with these friends? I mean, again, your circle is your circle, and George's circle was never full of great people. It sounds like again, the stories, his college career, the fact he got drafted by 4 different leagues. I mean, come on, that's wild in of itself. And I'm not shocked at all that football would have drafted him. He was probably, they watched him play basketball. They're like, this guy can run. He could be a guy who could have been a tight end. He would have been like better than Rob Gronkowski back in the day.
God, he's bigger than Gronkowski.
He's unbelievable. I mean, he's a talent of the ages, but chose baseball, rightfully so, because he wanted to have a long life, one could argue.
Right.
So I find it interesting how George looks at life and how his bitterness or lack of winning or lack of whatever, he ties it to individuals and goes after those individuals. And for whatever reason, he put his mark on Dave. And
well, he just expected to win the World Series every year. And when it didn't happen, what he did is he just keep firing managers. And in Martin's case, keep bringing Martin back. But he kept firing managers because they weren't winning. And Dave Winfield's not the only player he went after. If he felt a person was underperforming, they would get the wrath of Steinbrenner. I mean, so he was a really unusual.
Did you see what he did in that playoff, though, that he got mad at him about for the Yankees? In the divisional series, he batted .350.
Right.
And then something happened in the championship series and then in the World Series, he had 1 hit. It seems obvious to me like the guy was hurt or something. Like something was going on.
What I read is, if I don't have it in front of me, but if you look at the batting averages of the Yankees in the World Series, he's not the only guy who stopped hitting. The team just went into those, batting funks for 4 or 5 games, and they didn't hit. It wasn't just Winfield, but he's the guy who was going to catch it.
I remember Robin Ventura, the third baseman. They had asked him once when he was on the Mets. They said, "You're playing the hot corner. What was the hardest hit ball you ever had to field at third base?" Because that's where guys are in their wheelhouse. They're coming around on you. And he said the hardest hit ball was a line drive from Dave Winfield that he jumped up to catch, and he missed it, and it was a home run. He goes, that's how. I actually jumped up thinking I was going to catch this line drive, and then I turned around and the thing was a home run. It's the hardest hit ball ever, and he said if I caught it, it probably would have taken my hand off. So
can you imagine? Can you even imagine?
Think about the stats we have today on this stuff. I'm sure somewhere there exists a video of that hit of Robin Ventura jumping for a home run, but there's got to be some stat-o-matic person that's going to get there and say, "Hey, oh."
I think the other thing that makes him such a unique baseball player is his athleticism, being able to play basketball, being as tall as he was. So you're talking about an individual who's not stiff at the plate, was real. I loved his batting stance. Could really get crouched down if he wanted to crouch down, go get the ball if he wanted to. He's kind of like a more Vlad Guerrero Senior. I kind of pictured the two. It was a good matchup if you look at Dave Winfield to him. Now Vlad had a little more flair. However, Dave could really extend and go get the ball in a lot of different places because of his arm length, number one, and because of his athleticism. So he was a real unique player when it came to that. So he could track a ball and then obviously put it where he wanted to. But to be that tall and to be that good at a game that, everyone proclaims, everyone knows that his most difficult thing to do is hit a baseball. And his height, that's just adds to it. And that just adds to it. And he had a long
It's also
career.
interesting that, now that Ohtani's doing what he's doing, what if someone would have said, "Hey, Dave, I don't think we had a designated hitter back then, but, we'd like to make you a pitcher and a batter." Because I don't doubt with a little bit of work, he could have been a major league pitcher. In the World Series that he won the MVP, in the semifinal game, he pitched into the 9th inning and had a 7-0 lead. And he got tired and they got a couple runs off him. They pulled him and the relievers went on to blow the game, and they lost 8-7. So he didn't get to play in a championship game, but he was the whole dominant player of the whole series, so he won the MVP.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of I would that would be a great segment to look at. There's a lot of college players who pitched and hit, and then they were obviously not allowed to do what Ohtani's doing, and then they just said, you're going to focus on pitching or hitting.
You have to do one or the other.
Yeah, there's a lot of talented play. I mean, the most talented baseball players hit and pitch really, really great.
Well, there was an old story about Stan Musial in the minors was a pitcher, and he hurt his arm. So they said, well, you're out of baseball unless you can hit. Well, he only hit like 350 every year.
Rick Ankiel was also a pitcher before he became a center fielder.
Yeah. Yep.
Poor Rick had a little more of a, man, that was an interesting career.
When he was good, he was good.
That is a true story. Well, this is a great going down memory lane. The Blue Jays, hats off to the Blue Jays for winning the World Series. Hats off, Todd, for meeting him. I can imagine that was quite an event. I also wonder, like, obviously being in Minnesota, as some people call it, America's land, and you're talking about going to University of Minnesota, and I would just can imagine the running joke. I forgot what comedian says it, but hey, what do you do? Is he in college? He just looks at you like, I play baseball and basketball, and I could play football, but I'm done with those two. Just playing those two right now. But yeah, it's pretty nutty.
And to our fans who follow this, do yourself a favor. Go on YouTube and look up some highlights of Dave Winfield. You're be in for a treat.
I absolutely agree with that. And again, thank you, Dad, for unpackaging the George Steinbrenner hatred fest of good people. Like, if you made his hate list, you were probably a saint. Well, that's probably not true. He hated the goods and the bads. But yes, George had a list. Do you think he had like a name? He had like a little journal that he wrote down before he went to bed of who he wanted to go after the next day, like his goal. He's like, "Ooh, I really don't like the way he said that today."
Yeah.
Knowing that George actually did get put in jail, Billy Martin's quote about Reggie Jackson and George takes on more significance when he said, "One's a liar and the other's a convicted liar."
Yeah.
Well, that's it for us here at Rounding Third, Dad. I can't wait for the next one. This has been really, really a really big treat for us. I hope you guys will have a good time. Please comment any stories that you have, any memories that you have of Dave Winfield playing baseball back in the day. And obviously, he would be a force. In my opinion, he'd be a force today. He would be a force at any time. He was one of those special, talented individuals that we got to witness play a game that we all love. I am your host, Brendan. That is my father, Peter. He gives the best. And Todd, thanks for joining. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.